I have a scar on my left cheek, which my sister cut open with her own hands while I was asleep. But I never exposed her. Because I am waiting for an opportunity to personally push her into hell. Opportunities come so unexpectedly. That day it was raining, and my cousin, who had just bought a new car, drove by to pick us up from school. Sister Angel sat in that car under the envious gazes of everyone. As for me, I dared not sit inside. After all, my cousin Blaze has never liked me since we were young. Ever since my face was disfigured and I became the laughingstock, he has grown to dislike me even more, feeling that I brought him shame. I was about to turn and leave when my kind-hearted cousin suddenly spoke up. "What are you standing there for? Get in the car." I hesitated a bit, still not daring to get in the car. But Blaze had already opened the car door, and just as I was about to step in, Angel suddenly remembered something and said to me, "Don't get in, I just remembered that I left my homework notebook in the classroom. Go help me get it home. If I can't turn in my homework tomorrow, I'll tell my mom and have her kill you." Blaze cleared his throat twice. Thus, with half a foot already in the car, I immediately pulled it back. I saw the fleeting pride in Angel's eyes. Having long been accustomed to her gaze, I didn't take it to heart at all. I turned and walked towards the school, calculating the time, and deliberately took a detour to the entrance of the senior year classroom. At the moment the school bell rang, the time it took for the person to walk out of the classroom and into the hallway was neither a second more nor a second less. As I was walking to the entrance of class 34, I precisely ran into Wendy, the girl who had just stood up and left the last row of the classroom with her classmates. I recognize this beautiful girl. She is a year above me and is Blaze's girlfriend, who is currently in love. Blaze's girlfriend Wendy, who also knows me, is different from others. She doesn't avoid me because of the scar on my left cheek. Every time we meet, she asks about my studies. I therefore believe in my heart that she is a girl worth trusting and relying on. I hurried over and accidentally bumped into her. She gently steadied me and asked with a smile, in such a rush, "Have you seen Blaze?" I reported truthfully, "Sister Wendy, Blaze's car was just outside. He might think you're going to extra classes, you can let him come back to pick you up now." Wendy smiled and patted my head, her smile reaching her eyes, and said, "Okay, thank you for telling me, I'll call him back to pick me up right now." I watched Sister Wendy quickly go downstairs while making a call to have Blaze come pick her up. In the gaze of everyone who couldn't see, a smile slowly appeared at the corners of my mouth. I just deliberately ignored the fact that my sister Angel was sitting in Blaze's car. Then I calculated the seconds and minutes. At this time, Blaze's car should just be arriving on the bridge. The bridge is the most important link connecting the road conditions of our town streets and the route to our school. Every person leaving our town must cross a bridge like this. The bridge has 2 lanes, one for cars and one for bicycles. Because the bridge is dark and deserted, incidents of road robbery and crimes against pedestrians often occur here. It is said that there are homeless people who specifically wait on this dark bridge for passing single women to forcefully rob them. Of course, these are just rumors. I had always taken the bus to this bridge to return home, something I never believed in before. Until yesterday. Yesterday was my day to be on duty at school. Angel was originally supposed to do duty with me, but she packed her bag and said she wanted to go shopping with her classmates, so she left first. When I finished cleaning at 6 o'clock and walked out of the school gate, I immediately saw Blaze. Since Blaze started dating Senior Wendy, his overall hostility has decreased significantly, and when he encounters me, he no longer shows the same disdain as before. Seeing me come out, he took the initiative to walk up to me and asked, "Has Wendy come out?" I honestly informed, "Senior Wendy needs to make up a class. It might be until 8 o'clock. After I finished speaking, I walked ahead. Who would have thought? Blaze suddenly drove over, lowered the car window, and said to me, "Get in, I'll give you a ride." I was quite happy, thinking that Blaze was finally being nice to me for once. But soon, just as Blaze was about to go over the bridge, he received a call from a friend. That friend on the phone asked him to meet in the city, and that location is opposite to where my home is. I have understood how to read people's expressions since I was young, and I knew that Blaze had other matters to attend to, but I hoped he could take me across the bridge. I trembled as I spoke, "Blaze, can you take me to under the bridge? I heard there are homeless people robbing up there." Blaze immediately burst into laughter, still insisting on parking the car under the bridge. "Do you have any money, you ugly monster? If you're going to rob someone, at least pick someone decent." Hurry back home, I've got things to do, don't listen to others' nonsense all day. Then he unceremoniously pushed me out of the car. I took a deep breath and walked onto the Douan Bridge alone. It was already 6:30 in the evening, and it was getting dark very quickly. The facilities on the bridge were not good, and there were no street lights along the entire route, so I could only walk forward in the dark. I walked faster and faster, praying that the bad guys would not target me, but in the end, I still heard what I didn't want to hear. Heaven is still quite kind to me, although it didn't let me be targeted. On this bridge, I witnessed a homeless man pull a little girl with a large backpack into the bridge's arch. The first thing that came to my mind was to run away. I didn't have a phone, so I couldn't call the police immediately, and I had no weapons on me. I knew that at this moment, I had no other option but to escape. However, when I rushed forward a short distance, I heard the desperate cries of that little girl. I knew that if I didn't help her, she might end up being dragged into a hole and brutally bullied by the bad guys, just as the rumors said. At this moment, I was still young and didn't know how badly the bad guys would bully that little girl. I thought it might be like what Blaze and his friends said, being cruelly toyed with. Perhaps there would be bloodshed, perhaps even death. Thinking of this, I shouted towards the bridge arch, "The police are coming, the police are coming, the police are coming." I shouted 3 times, not knowing if that bad person had let the little girl go because of it. Then, I sprinted down the bridge at 100-meter dash speed. I know that under the bridge, there is a public phone booth. I put in the only coin I had left and called the police. I spoke urgently, "Please send someone quickly, a bad person has taken a girl away." Then, I found a brightly lit convenience store. I stood at the door, hoping that the police would successfully rescue the little girl. However, I couldn't wait for the police to arrive. Instead, I first saw the little girl, panicked and at a loss, run down from the bridge and then run far away. It is estimated that the homeless man, after hearing me shout that the police were coming, didn't dare to cause trouble and let the little girl go. I waited another half hour, still unable to see any police cars arrive. At that moment, I realized that something had happened at this section of the bridge more than once or twice. It was likely that many people had called the police, but since the police had found nothing each time they came, they no longer took it seriously. Later, I wasn't sure if the police came, but a plan slowly took shape in my mind. I just didn't expect the opportunity to come so quickly. The plan is going so smoothly. Angel got into Blaze's car, and not long after, I ran into Wendy, who had just finished class. At the time when Wendy and Blaze were getting along the best, I knew that with just one phone call, Wendy could make Blaze turn back immediately. Blaze loved Wendy deeply and would never show up in front of the girl he adored with another girl, even if that person was his own cousin. Then, the only thing Blaze could do was to place Angel under the bridge halfway, just like he did to me yesterday. Of course, this plan still has a flaw. That is, I don't know if the timing will be just so coincidental that Blaze's car will happen to arrive right under the bridge. Although the time I calculated for Blaze's car was just enough to arrive near the bridge, if the car happened to be a bit early or a bit late, all the plans would just be plans. Everything was up to fate. I thought quietly to myself. That night, I deliberately delayed my return home. Originally, I was supposed to help Angel get the homework at 6:30, but I ended up dragging it out until 7 o'clock before leaving the school. I, along with the school's tutoring group, headed to the bus station. I waited for half an hour before the bus driver, who would take us to dinner, slowly drove over. As the bus passed over the bridge, I looked out the window, and outside was the pitch-black deep night, as if a ferocious flood beast would swallow a person whole. But I know I am sitting in the car, and I am safe now. I clenched my fists tightly, gripping the armrest with all my strength. Even through the glass, I seemed to hear Angel's piercing screams for help, but I knew that no one would come to save her. Absolutely no one would save her. I laughed out loud under such a fantasy. Back home, what awaited me was a slap from my stepmother, Dahlia. A fierce, violent blow landed heavily on my left cheek. The scar on my left cheek, which was cut open by Angel's sharp knife and not stitched up in time at the hospital, has started to throb again because of this slap. I clenched my fist tightly, covering my painfully throbbing left cheek, standing to the side. Dahlia did not let me off the hook. Instead, she chased after me, slapping me one after another. I held back my tears, slowly understanding from her insults why she wanted to hit me. "Why did you come back so late? Why didn't you come back with your sister? You did it on purpose to harm Angel, didn't you?" Don't think that by hurting my daughter, you'll have a good life. I ask you, why did you let her go home alone? Hearing this, I knew in my heart that my plan was no longer just a plan. At that moment, the pain I felt on my face no longer felt like pain. Because even if I didn't know what inhumane treatment Angel had endured, I was very clear that my plan had succeeded. When I covered my face with my hand, I gently caught a glimpse of her through the gaps between my fingers, using the corner of my eye. I believe that at that moment, Dahlia sensed something from my strange gaze. But she had no time to react, because the sound of the door opening came from the entrance. It was my dad, Bernard, who works outside, returning home. When Bernard returned and saw my stepmother hitting me indiscriminately, he naturally flew into a rage. He certainly wasn't worried about me getting hit, it was because he was on the night shift today, and Dahlia called him to rush home immediately, claiming that something big had happened at home. The family's source of income relied entirely on Bernard, who worked as a small foreman in an electronics factory. Dahlia had already made him angry by calling him back like this, and when he returned to find the house in complete disarray, he was naturally even more furious. When Dahlia stared at me in a daze, Bernard slapped her and pulled her off me, tossing her aside. Dahlia immediately curled up in the corner of the wall. Just as Bernard was about to kick, Dahlia suddenly teared up and cried, "How can you still be angry? Your daughter Angel has been bullied by bad people, and she won't be able to get married in the future. Let's see what you do then." Bernard retracted the foot he was about to kick out, and then, he slowly raised his eyes to see Angel, his daughter, emerging from the room, looking disheveled and neither fully human nor ghostly. This was his pride and joy. Angel had always been his entire hope, especially after my face was scarred and turned into a monster. Bernard placed all his expectations on Angel. She has fair skin and stunning beauty, resembling a younger Dahlia, but even more exquisite. Back then, Dahlia relied on her beauty to seduce my father, Bernard, in the electronics factory. After my mother succumbed to depression and jumped off a cliff, they moved in together, infatuated with each other. It was then that I learned my father had long had a daughter with Dahlia. This daughter, like me, was the same age, and her name was Angel. Angel inherited Dahlia's fiery personality. After moving into this house, she took advantage of my sleep and deeply slashed my left cheek with a sharp knife. That night my father Bernard was not at home, he was on duty at the factory. When Dahlia learned that her daughter had done such a thing, she did not immediately take me to the hospital for treatment. Instead, they gave me painkillers and forced me to take them. They casually took the medicinal oil and applied it to the open wound on my left face, and that was it. At that time I was still young and did not know that this scar would completely change my life. When my father noticed something was wrong with the left side of my face, Dahlia made up a story saying I had fallen. She even threatened me not to say it was Angel who did it, or she would scratch my right face as well. At that time I was only 10 years old, and I didn't even know how to resist. I only knew fear in my heart. I knew that if I didn't obey, I would suffer more. The fear and cowardice of that time have resulted in the current me, a hideous monster with an ugly scar on my left cheek that everyone can despise. I once quietly went to see an old traditional Chinese doctor in a town. The old doctor sadly told me, "Little girl, this scar can never be healed. When you go to school later and move to the big city, you can find a doctor there to see if they have any good methods, but your grandfather can't do anything." It was because of this belief that I endured the ridicule of my classmates time and again, standing on the edge of the cliff, trying to find my mother, that I persevered. I know this is my last hope. I am going to the big city, I want to see the doctors there, and if possible, I will spare no effort to heal the scars on my face. At that time I was so small, so young, I still did not know that the scars on the surface could be healed, but the scars in the heart, however, are difficult to heal for a lifetime. I have been enduring with such an ugly face all this time. I never expected that a small plan could so easily throw this family into chaos. That night, my father and stepmother took Angel to the city for a medical checkup. Before leaving, they reminded me that I absolutely must not spread the word about Angel being bullied by a homeless man on the bridge. Otherwise, they would break my legs. I pretended to be scared and covered my face, nodding repeatedly. At that time I had no phone or computer and was cut off from information. Although I still didn't know how Angel was specifically bullied by the bad guys, I vaguely felt that this was something related to the girl's reputation. In our still underdeveloped small town, a girl's reputation can determine whether she can marry into a good family in the future. I saw Angel with her hair disheveled, and when they took her out, I deliberately cast a glance at her from the corner of my eye, revealing a glimmer of pity. Angel keenly sensed my sarcasm and screamed at me hysterically, "Mom, it's this bitch who harmed me, it's her who made my cousin drop me off halfway, it's her who ruined me." Before she could finish her sentence, she was interrupted by Bernard, who shot me a fierce glare. "Enough, don't you think things are chaotic enough? Blaze doesn't even like her, how could she just drop you after one phone call? Then why did she get out of the car? Why did she let me get in alone?" Some things, Angel feared, she would never understand until the day she died. I innocently said, "Angel, it was you who asked me to get your homework notebook, have you forgotten?" "Mom and Dad, you can go ask Blaze to clarify." Because of my words, Angel had nothing more to say and reluctantly followed her parents to the hospital for a physical examination that night. As for what happened later, I am not sure. The plan succeeded, which has been enough to keep me safe in this house for a long time. After all, they were all too busy taking their precious daughter, who had been bullied, to various medical checkups. Because of this incident, I felt my father Bernard aged by more than 10 years. Not long after this happened, one day I saw him with a knife, going to attack that homeless man. But Dahlia firmly restrained him. "What are you being impulsive for? Angel is already like this, if you go and kill that person, won't the whole village know that your daughter has been bullied? What can be done? Am I, Bernard's daughter, to be insulted like this right before my eyes?" Bernard sighed, unable to accept it. When my face was brutally scarred by his precious daughter with a knife, he felt no resentment. But when his precious daughter was harshly insulted by a homeless man, he could not bear it. I gently thought, what a deeply affectionate pair of father and daughter. Dahlia glanced at me warily and whispered, "Anyway, as long as we don't say a word about it, nothing will happen, only we will know." Dahlia, seeing that Bernard was unyielding, said, "If you really want to go and harm someone, then don't involve my daughter. At that time, I'll tell the villagers that it was your daughter Mary who was bullied. Angel still needs to marry into a good family. I heard that your factory director's son just returned from out of town. Is that true? Let's discuss it properly and see if we can introduce them to each other." Bernard therefore gave up the idea of killing the homeless man. Although Bernard gave up the plan to kill the homeless man in order to protect Angel's reputation. But I, however, do not wish to see any girl encounter such danger again. So, I took out the coins I had saved for many years, went to a public phone booth near the school, and called the police. I did not reveal my name, each time it was an anonymous report. "There is a homeless man on the bridge who spends all day bullying and robbing single women in revenge." At first, the police were quite irritated, but with my repeated reports, they finally gave me a local police station landline number, so that if I had concrete evidence, I could submit it directly here. I then made one call after another to the landline of this police station. Every time I answered the phone, it was a young voice. The young police officer did not, like others, think that I was making a malicious report. Instead, he seriously recorded my words. I shared several important points with him and provided an effective method. "Officer, you can have one of your female colleagues disguise herself as a girl and walk alone onto the bridge. This will lure the homeless man out, and then you can subdue him and follow the clues to force him to reveal other criminal activities." The police were taken aback for a moment. When he asked for my real name, I pleaded with him, "I fear retaliation, please do not reveal my existence, or I will be in danger." The police uncle probably thought I was afraid of causing trouble, so he smiled and agreed to me. One afternoon after school, after the police officer agreed to me, I was taking the bus home and saw several police cars lined up as I passed by the bridge. In the crowd, a ragged homeless man was pulled out from under the bridge by several police officers. Standing beside him were a few uniformed officers and several young men in plain clothes, likely undercover police. I know, this is the homeless man being arrested. The young police officer who answered my call indeed kept his word and arrested the homeless man, who would face the disaster of imprisonment. That night, the police came to my house because it was said that after the homeless man was arrested, he honestly confessed under police interrogation to having bullied and insulted 13 women. One of the women he successfully insulted was the daughter of the old Lynn family under the big tree in the village. That night, not only was my father taken away for questioning, but even my stepmother Dahlia had lost her usual arrogance. She and Angel were summoned to the police station to participate in identifying the criminals. This matter spread from one person to 10, from 10 to 100, and soon the entire town knew about it. When Angel returned to school for classes, her classmates began to look at her with sympathetic eyes. And my stepmother Dahlia began to spread rumors. It wasn't my Angel who was bullied, my Angel ran away. That day, she and her sister Mary went onto the bridge, and it was that girl Mary who was insulted. Soon, the sympathetic gazes of my classmates in school shifted their focus. I became the pitiful victim, while Angel became the one who escaped. Although students at this age are only 16 or 17, they gradually begin to discern right from wrong. Public opinion shifted from "she is so pitiful" to "Angel is so bad," watching her own sister being insulted and doing nothing to help. I never would have imagined that things would turn out this way. However, because of this incident, Angel's proud group of good sisters at school gradually drifted away from her. After all, no one wants to be left to die when death is imminent, with Angel standing by and doing nothing. Although I still can't make any friends at this school, I never really cared. Angel wasn't in a much better situation. Her friends had completely distanced themselves from her because of her failure to save her sister. Since Angel was isolated at school, she, having no friends, turned to seek solace outside of school. She has always been passionately involved with a vocational high school student outside of school. One day, I heard her on the phone with a vocational high school student, arranging to go hiking and spend the night somewhere. At first, Angel would not agree at all, because Dahlia would come back every night. Since Angel was insulted by the homeless man, Dahlia has been keeping a close eye on her precious daughter. Not only does she forbid her from coming home late, but she also prohibits her from making boyfriends. This boyfriend who attends vocational high school is named Robert. If Dahlia finds out, she will definitely force them to break up. While washing the dishes, there were only Angel and me at home. I looked out at the beautiful weather and said, "The weather is really nice, I really want to go hiking." Angel scoffed and mocked, "You ugly freak, just forget it. You don't really think anyone would take you hiking, do you?" I thought to myself, am I a monster because of you? I said calmly and gently, "Yes, that's why I envy you, Angel. You have someone by your side, unlike me, who doesn't have a single friend." Angel, this empty-headed fool, straightened up proudly after my compliment. "Of course, you know, Robert even invited me to go hiking. We plan to camp." "Really? I'm so envious of you. Can you take me with you?" I deliberately made my request subtle and then quietly waited for her to coldly reject me. "You shouldn't even think about it." Angel turned and went into the house, packing her clothes for the night in the mountains. "With your ugly face, even the ghosts would be scared away if you went hiking. You better get out of here and go somewhere cool." Soon, Angel packed her overnight bag for the mountain under my inspiration. The sound of a motorcycle parking came from downstairs. Before leaving, she instructed me, "My mom is back, just tell her I'm sleeping in my room and to not disturb my sleep." I obediently said, "Okay." Then I stood on the windowsill, watching her and her boyfriend drive away together. I know that something is destined to happen to them tonight. Although I don't know what benefits their actions have for me, I'm not in a hurry. I know that patience is the only way for me to completely escape this bottomless abyss. After several nights like this, as the year came to an end, Dahlia worked the night shift every day, and Bernard also worked the night shift every day. They usually returned home only in the morning after their shifts. And after Angel and her boyfriend had their first time, there was a second, and soon they progressed to sleeping over at her place. As for me, I was responsible for keeping watch outside the door. Because of my watch, Robert even crossed paths with me, so we were considered acquaintances. At first, when he saw the scar on my left cheek, he was quite taken aback and shocked by my ugliness, but he quickly composed himself and smiled at me, saying, "Thank you." I turned my head and ignored him. I knew why he wanted to thank me. I hadn't told my family about their situation. Every day I stand at the door, listening to Angel's cries that are sometimes refreshing and sometimes painful, often unable to discern whether she is in pain or in joy. But in any case, I knew that if this got out, it would absolutely ruin Angel. But at that time I didn't have a phone, so I couldn't take any evidence. I often doubt that my daily act of keeping watch for them is effective. After all, Angel always looks blissfully satisfied every time Robert leaves. I feel that my plan might be wrong, and I start to feel a bit guilty. After all, I sacrificed a lot of time for memorizing English words to create space for them. And my future is entirely dependent on the college entrance examination. Until the winter vacation arrives, I know that all my sacrifices before have been worth it. Dahlia proudly took out a beautiful red dress in front of me at the dining table and said, "The factory director has agreed to let you go on a blind date with his son. Mom tells you, you must perform well and absolutely cannot make any mistakes. With your grades, you definitely can't get into a good university. If you can marry into the factory director's family and smoothly have a son or daughter for them, you will have no worries for the rest of your life, and Mom can enjoy a good life too." As soon as Dahlia finished speaking, Angel covered her mouth and rushed into the bathroom to vomit violently. I thought Angel was stimulated. After all, she loved Robert very much. At that time, in my somewhat closed-minded head, I always felt that if she didn't like Robert, why would she scream and shout every night when Dahlia wasn't around, only to send him downstairs with a face full of happiness and reluctance? Isn't this what my classmates call love? But when I, out of curiosity, walked into the bathroom to investigate, I saw Dahlia's old face change rapidly, and then she raised a hand, fierce and ruthless, and struck Angel's face. This is the first time I've seen Dahlia hit her precious daughter since I started keeping memories. 6 months ago, when she was bullied by bad people, Dahlia couldn't bring herself to hit her. Yet at this moment, without any distinction, she was hitting her, leaving me just as confused. My father Bernard saw Dahlia hitting her daughter and angrily stepped forward to stop her, only to hear Dahlia whispering something in his ear. Immediately, even my father was furious, and he slapped Angel hard across the face. At that moment, Dahlia noticed my presence, shot me a fierce glare, and scolded, "Go back to your room. You're not allowed to come out unless I call for you." I knew that if I dared to resist, I would be the next one to be beaten. So I reluctantly returned to my room, and it wasn't until the next morning that I quietly finished my morning routine and took the bus to school in the city. What surprised me was that Angel still came to school as usual after being beaten last night. The final exams are coming soon, and I have also immersed myself in review. I tell myself that there is only one semester left. As long as I get through this semester, once I get into college, I will be able to escape this bottomless abyss. Even though at this moment, I still do not know how exactly I can escape this desperate situation. I actively reviewed while secretly observing Angel's movements. As usual, she combed her hair, put on makeup, and sent messages in class. The only difference from usual was that after being slapped twice by Dahlia that night, she refused to meet Robert. I don't know why she refused to meet Robert again. Many times, I saw Robert waiting for her at the school gate, and she just pretended not to see him and walked straight away. Robert couldn't wait for her, so he came to find me. One time, he sincerely asked me, "Why doesn't Angel pay attention to me?" I can only say, I don't know either. He probably saw my difficulties and didn't make it hard for me, then walked away. But I knew he definitely wouldn't give up just like that. Just now, I caught a glimpse of a fierce determination in his eyes. I instinctively felt that if I wanted to push Angel to the brink, the best ally might be Robert. I quietly awaited the arrival of that day. That day, while I was cleaning at home, I saw a hospital test report. The name on the report was my stepmother Dahlia, and the test showed that she was 2 months pregnant. However, I knew very well that Dahlia had already undergone a sterilization procedure and could not possibly be pregnant. Recalling last Sunday, Angel was pulled out of bed early in the morning by Dahlia to go to the city. I suspect that the owner of this test sheet must be someone else. This person should be the Angel who has spent countless days and nights with Robert. Angel's morning sickness was getting worse. Sometimes during family meals, she would suddenly rush into the bathroom, covering her mouth to vomit. At this time, because I was searching for college entrance examination materials and had learned to go to the internet cafe to browse the web, I also found a significant characteristic of pregnancy from some clues: morning sickness. Various signs indicate that, on the eve of the college entrance examination, Angel is pregnant, and the child is Robert's. However, just as the truth was getting closer, and I was thinking every day about how to uncover the true nature of her unwed pregnancy, one of Dahlia's actions shocked me deeply. She actually arranged for Angel to meet the factory director's son according to the previous plan, even on the eve of the spring festival. I suddenly understood why Angel refused to meet with Robert. Dahlia has grand ambitions. She actually wants the factory director's son to be her backup. Angel is not only beautiful, but also has a great figure, quickly catching the attention of the factory director's son, Li Feng. In just a short winter vacation, the two have already become hot and ambiguous, and it is said that they have even gone to hotels 2 or 3 times. I overheard this while reviewing at home. Dahlia, in a boastful manner, said to my father Bernard, "The factory director's son really loves our Angel." I taught Angel to specifically choose a day when she was on her period to sleep with him. Youth is ultimately youth, the factory director's son has no doubts about our Angel. It seems our daughter marrying into the factory director's family and becoming a wealthy wife is just around the corner. My father laughed heartily upon hearing this, and that night he asked me to brave the wind and snow to buy him some good wine. During this spring festival, the family is enveloped in a harmonious joy. Especially Dahlia, who was beaming all day, telling everyone that her daughter was about to marry into a wealthy family. Angel was also in an extremely good mood. After she got rid of Robert, she seamlessly connected with the factory director's foolish son. Not only did they sleep together, but she also made the factory director's foolish son believe that she was innocent. Every day and night, I quietly review for the college entrance exam at home. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I must get into university. After the spring festival, Angel simply stopped going to school. Her grades were never that good, and she didn't expect to get into a good school anyway. Moreover, the factory manager had already come to propose. It is said that during the short month of the spring festival, the factory director's son has successfully gotten Angel pregnant. And my stepmother Dahlia immediately shared this news with the factory manager. The factory director, who had always wanted to hold his grandson, and his wife were delighted to see it happen. It was rare for their son to find someone he liked, and even more so that she became pregnant so smoothly. The factory director, who has always adhered to the belief that more children bring more blessings, came to propose the next day with his son, and the betrothal gift alone amounted to $666,000. This betrothal gift is quite impressive in our small village, and it would surely make many people envious if they heard about it. I thought Angel would have a good life from now on, so I could only work harder on my studies, hoping to do better on the exams. But I didn't expect that Angel hadn't officially married into the Lee family and started living a good life yet. She had already set a trap for me. According to Angel's plan, the salary given by the factory director would be used to build a house in her hometown, but Angel had one request. She didn't want me, this ugly creature, to enjoy the benefits of her marriage, so she proposed that my father agree that if he were to use that money to build a house, he would have to sever the father-daughter relationship with me. In other words, their family, fearing that I would take their betrothal gifts, wanted to drive me away and cut off all ties with me. This house allows me to live here for free until the college entrance examination, but after the exam, they want me to move out and I won't be able to continue living in their new house. My father initially disagreed, not because he loved me as his daughter, but because he held traditional views and believed that having more descendants was always better as one grew older. But Dahlia kept reminding him in his ear, "Don't forget she's an ugly monster. Who will marry her in the future? If you don't take the opportunity to break off your relationship with her now, she might stay in our new house for the rest of her life, and you'll have to support this ugly monster for a lifetime." My father, under Dahlia's instigation, went with me to the local police station to process the paperwork for severing parental ties. After the consultation, I was told that the law cannot clearly sever the father-daughter relationship. The police station suggested that my father and I go to a law firm to establish an agreement regarding the obligation of support, stating that I have no right to inherit his estate, and I have no obligation to support him. Both parties agree that there is no need for either to visit the other. This is the best way to sever the father-daughter relationship. My father thought this method was great, so he immediately called a lawyer to sign the agreement. Bernard and I severed our father-daughter relationship on the spot. From then on, I had no connection with my father, I could not inherit his property, and in the future, I would no longer need to support him. We would not have any contact until death. But before that, he has the obligation to raise me until I turn 18. After everything was settled, Dahlia was quite pleased with herself, while I remained unfazed, neither sad nor upset. According to the agreement between my father and me, I can temporarily stay in this house until after the college entrance examination, before leaving. But Dahlia stopped preparing my dinner in order to completely drive me away. In the bitter cold of winter, she didn't give me a single blanket. I wanted to apply for a dormitory at a school, but the school had already closed dormitory applications as the college entrance examination was approaching. With no way out, I took the only coins I had left and returned to the public phone booth at the school gate, trying to dial the police station's landline number. The one answering the phone was still the young police officer from that day. After learning about my situation, the officer asked me to come to the police station. When I rushed over, he was the one who received me. He apologetically said, "I also live in a dormitory, and it's all men, so I can't take you in." But I have a female colleague who just transferred recently. If you provide a school certificate, I'll try to talk to her and see if you can stay until after the college entrance exam. I listened to the young police officer's account, tears wetting my face. The kindness of this stranger was even greater than that of my own father. I have always been afraid to face him with my scarred left cheek, because I fear my ugliness might frighten this kind-hearted and good-natured police officer. If there is a future, if I really have a future, I will repay this kind young police officer well. The young police officer saw me keeping my profile turned towards him and smiled as he asked for my name. He then introduced himself, saying, "I'm Philip. Are you the girl who made the anonymous report that day? I recognized your voice. Don't worry, I will keep it confidential. Thank you for your bravery that day, it prevented many people from getting hurt. I hope you continue to be brave in the future and do well in your studies so you can go to a good university. The sky will be very broad for you." He had a righteous expression, and even when he looked at my ugly left face, there was a gentle look on his face. In his eyes, I saw a respect and understanding that I had never experienced from others. It was a time when I needed nourishment. Philip lent me $1,000 and said, "It's not a gift. When you succeed in the future, remember to pay me back with interest. But if you forget, it's fine, just don't worry about it." I originally intended to use this money to support children in the mountainous areas. It was from that time that I learned Officer Philip also came from the mountains and was supported to come out. Now he continues to sponsor underprivileged children. The night before the college entrance examination, I returned to my home under the big tree and met Angel, whose belly was gradually growing. Even though Angel was pregnant, she still radiated beauty. Upon seeing me, this ugly creature, she quickly spat and said, "How unlucky." I clenched my fist and thought to myself, I am where I am today, all thanks to you. I really want to see how long Angel's good luck can last. But at this moment, just before the college entrance examination, I can't afford to make any mistakes, so I swallowed my anger, packed some clothes, and planned to leave this home. As I reached the door, I happened to run into my father. He didn't ask me where I was living now, he just saw me moving things and, particularly displeased, said, "Don't take things from home without permission." I can only say, it's all my own clothes. Before I left the house, my father called out to me, "Your sister is hosting a banquet at the Guafu Hotel on May 1st. They know about your existence, so you must attend." I originally wanted to refuse, but my father didn't give me a chance to say no. Dress decently. If you don't have any clothes, wear your school uniform. Just tell people you're still in school. Oh, and remember to wear a mask so you don't scare anyone. At this moment, Dahlia also stepped out and added, "It's best to wear a few more masks so you don't scare others silly. If others didn't know of your existence, they wouldn't need a monster like you." Angel touched her protruding belly and said, "What bad luck, why did I have to take her along? With that ugly face of hers, can I still get married? What nonsense are you talking about?" Dahlia was taken aback by her daughter's words. Marriage is a serious matter that requires good omens, and hearing her daughter say such things made her very angry. She couldn't even be bothered to scold me and instead turned to educate her daughter, "Don't talk nonsense, you're going to be a mother soon." At this moment, Angel would never have thought that she would unwittingly speak the truth. I was carrying my luggage as I left home, taking the bus back to Officer Philip's colleague's temporary dormitory, when I happened to run into Angel's ex, Robert, who was also on the bus. I believe this is not a coincidence. Robert must have caught wind of something and, unable to see Angel, specifically came here to find me. I know that although Robert is rough around the edges and has a lot of anger, he is by no means an irredeemable bastard. On the contrary, every time he spoke to me in the past, he was extremely polite. Robert sat down and asked me, "I heard Angel is getting married?" I nodded and honestly said, "Yes." Robert saw that I was nervous and comforted me, "Don't worry, I'm not here to cause you trouble. I just have some things I can't figure out." I know what Robert can't understand, we are both people who have been abandoned and despised. No one knows better than I do the taste of being despised throughout this life. I admit that at this moment, I felt some sympathy for Robert, along with a bit of selfishness, and perhaps a long-suppressed resentment. I watched as Robert slowly spoke, "The child in Angel's belly should be yours." I saw Robert's expression change suddenly after hearing those words. On May 1st, it was Angel's wedding day. In order to meet the number required by the other family, I, this inconspicuous ugly duckling, was also invited to join the lineup. At this time, with just over a month left until the college entrance examination, Dahlia insisted that I go home early in the morning to help her with work. From morning until noon, it wasn't until 11 o'clock that the wedding banquet officially began. By the time I sat down, I was already ravenous. When the host on stage began to speak, I had already lost my resolve, staring at the table full of food and swallowing my saliva, but I held back. At this moment, I still did not know that a grand drama specifically targeting the child in Angel's belly was slowly unfolding. At this moment, the guests were all immersed in their joyful blessings for the newlyweds, and no one thought of anything negative. Just as the wedding host delivered a speech, inviting the groom and bride to make their grand entrance, he also invited the four parents to come up on stage. The VCR on the stage suddenly played an ambiguous video. All the guests present were stunned by the scene. What is most astonishing is that this video has no censorship at all. Everything that should be shown is fully revealed throughout. I saw some parents immediately cover their children's eyes while they themselves watched with great interest. The filming location of the VCR is in Angel's room at home. Angel, exhausted from being tossed around by the strong man, lies on her back on the bed, gazing at the beautiful ceiling. The man beside her speaks suggestive and lewd words, and she giggles, sounding like a clucking hen. Perhaps even Angel was stunned by this commotion. The first to react was Dahlia. She tried to rush towards the broadcasting room, but it was all too late. Everything seemed to have been premeditated. The broadcasting room's door was already locked tight, and no one could get in. Angel, with her big belly, cried out in panic, "The video is fake." The factory director's foolish son ignored her cries, his anger causing flames to rise from his head. At the end of the video, there is a recording of a doctor who seems to be giving an interview. She points to a photo of Angel and says, "I remember this girl, she came with her mother. I did the ultrasound and pregnancy check for her before the spring festival. She was just barely 18 at that time, and she was already 2 months pregnant, but she was thin, so her belly wasn't very noticeable." A person pressed her, "Doctor, can you take responsibility for what you said?" The doctor rolled his eyes in anger. "I've delivered tens of thousands of children, how could I not be responsible? If I have told a single lie in the above words, you can have this girl come and slap my face. It's simply outrageous. Who do you think you are?" The person chasing after him pointed the camera at himself. "I am the father of Angel's child, you know, the factory director's foolish son. Are you trying to be the father of my child? Should I say you're stupid?" The video came to an abrupt stop. Robert, without showing his face, successfully ruined Angel's wedding and shattered Dahlia's lifelong hopes, relying only on a VCR and a bribed wedding planner's projectionist. Seeing this, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. While everyone was excitedly gossiping, and my family and Angel were losing face, I hurriedly stuffed food into my mouth. These are all very good ingredients: abalone, lobster, and big crabs. I have to say, the factory director is really willing to spend money for his daughter-in-law. It's a pity Angel is not blessed to enjoy them. At that moment, I heard the other sentence I had deliberately said to Robert on the bus that day. "Her attending physician is Dr. Otto from the Central Hospital, you can go ask her." And this name is that of the attending physician I saw on the prenatal examination report while I was doing a thorough cleaning at home that day. I didn't expect Robert's methods to be so ruthless and harsh. With just a little clue I gave him, he could create such a bloody storm. Perhaps to punish the bad, there should be someone worse and more ruthless. I think I found the right person this time. The wedding scene was in chaos that day. It was said that the factory director's foolish son, in a fit of anger, pushed the pregnant Angel off the stage, cursing her as a cheap whore. Unfortunately, Angel was lucky enough not to die on the spot. After being sent to the hospital, she underwent an emergency cesarean section and gave birth to a baby boy. The factory director's foolish son immediately took the baby's hair for DNA testing. When the test results came out, it indeed showed that the baby boy born to Angel had no parental relationship with him. The factory director's foolish son was furious and immediately demanded the return of the betrothal gifts amounting to $666,000, as well as compensation for emotional distress. The factory director was even more ruthless than his own son. He immediately fired Bernard, who was a minor leader in the factory, and didn't spare Dahlia, who was just a low-level worker. He fired them both and implemented professional suppression, forbidding other nearby factories from hiring these two shameless individuals, or else they would be opposing his family. In one night, the so-called bright future they spoke of all fell apart because of Robert's VCR. Not only that, it became the laughingstock of the entire village and even spread to the neighboring village. Dahlia could no longer lift her head to face the world, not even daring to step outside her home. It is said that after Angel gave birth to the child, she developed depression. She would scream and throw things at home all day, causing unrest for the family dog. From then on, I devoted myself entirely to preparing for the college entrance examination. My father Bernard lost his job, and he has no mind to care about my life or death. It wasn't until I finished my college entrance examination, received the admission notice from Peking University, and became the top science student in the city that reporters and media chased me home for a paid interview. My father Bernard hurriedly came to the textile factory where I was working and found me. I find it a bit funny. When I saw the old man with gray hair standing in front of me, my heart was completely unmoved. My father still had the nerve to put on a serious face in front of me. "You need to go home for a while, a reporter wants to interview you, and I've already taken the deposit." I said, "Sorry, I have to work. I can't go back tomorrow." Bernard slammed his hand on the table in anger. I slowly took out the legal document that severed my father-daughter relationship and stated that I had been stripped of my inheritance. "This is the legal document you had me sign last time. If I remember correctly, I no longer have any father-daughter relationship with you, and I am not responsible for your support in the future. If you do not return the money you took back, I will remind the reporters to expose you," I said slowly. Bernard was so furious at my words that he was left speechless, stood up, and raised his hand to hit me. Just then, Officer Philip, who happened to be nearby on a case and stopped by to see me, walked in. He tightly grasped Bernard's hand, and Officer Chung, who had long known how I was treated by my biological father, gently reminded after stopping my father's violence, "Sir, legally, Mary indeed has no relation to you anymore. Please do not harass her, or you will be prosecuted." Bernard originally wanted to take action against me, but upon seeing Philip in full police uniform, he naturally didn't dare and left in a huff. I am very grateful to Officer Philip, and Officer Philip advised me to be cautious in everything. That day when he returned, it was said that Bernard violently confronted Dahlia, resenting her for framing him and severing his father-daughter relationship with his biological daughter, who had become the top scholar. In the midst of chaos, it was unknown who directly strangled the child, less than 2 months old, in the cradle. But there was no evidence to support this, and in the end, Bernard publicly claimed that Angel was mentally unstable and had directly strangled her own child. Robert is not a good person either. Ever since the child was born, he has been very eager to see the child, but Dahlia has always looked down on him and would not let him see the child no matter what. Now it's done, the child was directly killed, and he filed a lawsuit, taking them straight to court. In the end, it was said that the one who took on the responsibility was Angel, who had long been in poor mental condition. Angel was sent directly to a psychiatric hospital, and as for what happened later, I have no way of knowing. But I knew that Bernard wouldn't let me off so easily, so shortly after this incident, I went directly to the school's academic affairs office and requested the school leaders to ensure that my university admission information would not be made public. The school leaders learned about my situation and understood my current family circumstances. They assured me that they would help keep the information confidential and would absolutely not disclose my admitted school and major to the outside. I let out a long breath. As I was about to leave this school and embark on the next journey of my life, a young man in a suit approached me. The other party claimed to be an employee of a large publicly listed electrical appliance company in Beijing and provided various documents as proof. He got straight to the point and said, "I am here to fund a college student project. Our boss knows your situation and wants to pay for your plastic surgery, but there is one condition: you must work for her company for 10 years after you graduate from college." The staff member spoke very sincerely, and I desperately tried to find a flaw in his words, but I couldn't find any. It was finally revealed that the other party's boss was actually the female entrepreneur, Jennifer, who often does charitable deeds and appears on television. In the business world, Jennifer is the most powerful and trustworthy brand. I did not hesitate too much and resolutely accepted his arrangement. I knew that people do not exist in this world for the sake of a face. But walking in this world with an ugly face brings many inconveniences. I have sworn countless times that one day, I would go to any lengths to heal the scars on my face. Now that there is such an opportunity, even if it lies beneath a bottomless abyss, I am not afraid. It turns out that my approach was not wrong. Under the arrangement of Jennifer's assistant, I quickly underwent my first facial scar removal laser surgery. After examining my medical case, the doctor believed that the scar made by the knife could be mostly removed with technology. Even if it couldn't be removed 100%, restoring it to at least 80% of its original appearance would be completely feasible. I originally thought that if I could remove 50% of the scars, it would be worth being happy about, the rest I could cover up with makeup. But I didn't expect that the current technology is so good. The doctor said that this scar is not a congenital pigment scar. In fact, it is relatively uncomplicated. In the span of a year, I underwent 8 laser scar removal surgeries consecutively, each time with conservative treatment, without any side effects. The doctor believed that I was young, and safety was the top priority. Because of the doctor's non-aggressive approach, the scars on my face have healed particularly well, with almost no discomfort. In just 1 year, as I walked among the bustling crowd at the university, I already looked like a normal person, just like everyone else. Like a normal person, this is just an easily attainable thing for an ordinary person. But for me, I have struggled for over a decade for this. Since I was scarred on my face at the age of 10, my greatest wish has been to walk like a normal person. Finally, I did it. With the support of the kind-hearted entrepreneur Jennifer, I successfully became an ordinary person. Now, when my classmates talk to me, as long as they don't stare at my left cheek, they won't see the deep, ugly scar that once hid on my left face. There were even male classmates who asked me to watch a movie and confessed their feelings to me. I could hardly imagine this before. I once thought that such days did not belong to me, but now, they are happening to me in reality. From then on, my world was no longer just myself and endless math problems. I also began to live like an ordinary person, studying, eating, and making friends in college. I even joined the student council and participated in clubs. When I graduated, I performed on stage with a female classmate, dancing the popular dance of that year. When I was dancing on stage, I saw a familiar face among the relatives invited by the students to attend the graduation ceremony in the audience. I suspected that I was seeing things, or perhaps it was just a product of my thoughts during the day, so I misjudged. But when I focused again, I saw that person. It was Officer Philip. I still owe Officer Philip over $1,000, including principal and interest, maybe even more than 1,000. After I was accepted into university, I once tried to send money to Officer Philip. But every registered letter was returned unopened. When I called the police station to find Officer Philip, I learned that he had been transferred. I completely lost contact with Officer Philip because of this matter, and I was sad for a long time. I once thought I would never see Officer Philip again. Such a good Philip, and I ended up losing touch with him like this. Just thinking about it makes me feel sad. I never expected to see him in this situation. It seemed he had already forgotten me and no longer recognized me. When he saw me looking at him, he even friendly nodded in my direction. I could see in his eyes that it was the gaze he reserved for strangers. I felt a bit lost, having misstepped, and was lightly pinched at the waist by the captain, which jolted me back to reality, and I continued to focus on dancing. After the ceremony performance ended, I searched for Officer Philip's figure among the throngs of people. He was already very tall, dressed in all black, and his silhouette was particularly striking. I rushed up to him and stood in front of him. For a long while, he didn't recognize me, or perhaps he thought I looked a bit familiar, but he didn't dare to believe it. After all, I put on heavy makeup today, completely covering the scar on my left cheek. I didn't know how to start the first conversation with him. At that moment, a girl walked over and shouted, "Bro, do you know Mary?" When Officer Philip heard my name, a smile slowly blossomed in his eyes. The doubts he had just been unable to understand now found their answers because of this name. He smiled at me, revealing his snow-white teeth. "Nice to meet you, Mary." The girl smiled, resembling Officer Philip in 3 ways, and teased, "That's good, bro. I thought you were a woman repellent, wasting your good looks." The girl turned her head to look at me and introduced herself. "Hi, Mary, I'm in the same grade as you. I've heard a lot about you. Since you two know each other, I'll take my leave." I watched the girl walk away, hearing Philip say in my ear, "She is my half-sister, we only met a few years ago." I pondered for a moment and looked up into Officer Philip's eyes. His eyes were bright as he looked at my face and said, "You haven't changed at all, you're just the same as before." I couldn't help but chuckle, thinking that Officer Philip doesn't even know how to compliment. With such a big change in me, how could I possibly be the same as before? I walked ahead alone, wanting to buy a drink for him, and he nervously caught up with me. When I handed him the milk tea, I deliberately frowned and said, "Someone just couldn't even recognize who I am, yet has the nerve to say I'm the same as before." Officer Philip took a sip of my milk tea and said, "That's because you're even more beautiful than before, so I didn't recognize you." I took a sip of the milk tea, unable to hide my smile. I don't know if Officer Philip noticed my unusual behavior that day. But all the way, I laughed from the milk tea shop to the dormitory. That day was the happiest day of my college life, and also the happiest day of my life. I will never forget this day, the feeling of reuniting with the handsome Officer Philip at school, a thrill and surge of emotions I have never experienced in my life and will never feel for anyone else. After graduating from university, I came to Beijing, and according to the agreement made 4 years ago, I worked in finance at a listed electrical company. Miss Jennifer values me greatly, and I am very grateful to her. Our collaboration has been very pleasant, and I know that without her, there would be no today for me. Therefore, I work especially hard and with dedication for her. At the same time, I actively called on my junior classmates to come work at this company full of warmth and humanity. I have reserved a large number of outstanding talents for the company's growth and expansion. Miss Jennifer likes to take me wherever she goes. She often tells me that the best decision she ever made in this life was the act of kindness she showed by sponsoring me 4 years ago. Philip and I quickly established a romantic relationship, and now we are preparing for marriage. Sometimes he gets off work very late, and my favorite thing to do is to sit in a bookstore across from their police station and wait for him. The owner of this bookstore also sells coffee. Every afternoon, if I finish work early, I will order a cup of coffee here, sitting in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the police station across the street. That day, I saw Philip come back from outside. A small black stray cat was wandering around the entrance of the police station. All the officers went inside, but he crouched down, patted the little wild cat's head, and gave it some water to drink. The little wild cat then clung to him and wouldn't leave. He picked up the little wild cat, played with it, held it high, and laughed heartily. I looked at him through the glass window, and I knew he was the best home I would ever have in this life. I love him, most of all for his kindness, for the way he selflessly reached out to me when I fell into an endless abyss. From then on, every time I looked back, I would sigh, the so-called bottomless abyss, going down is also a journey of thousands of miles. The future is unpredictable, but I know that with a kind heart, even hitting rock bottom can lead to a rebound. I thank those who helped me in times of despair. From now on, I will selflessly help others. The end of the story.